Alright, welcome everybody to the Actors Academy. So, thank you all for being here. If you're new, welcome, nice to see you all. And if you've been here and you're a subscriber, thank you all for tuning in. I have a video that people have been asking for a lot lately, and it's for how can you be an actor as a teen? What do you have to do? What are some of the steps you have to take? What's the process? A bunch of different things. So I wanted to make a video on this. But now, just because it says it's for teens doesn't necessarily mean that's all it applies to. It also applies to whether you're a lot older, in the middle, younger. It varies in age ranges. It's not just specifically if you're a teen. You could be 20, 40, 50, it doesn't matter. But you guys have been asking for this video, so I wanted to give you guys something that would delve down a little bit for you guys at your age range. Now, the thing I do want to say is that these points that you're going to hear are going to be points that you haven't heard anywhere else before. Some of the main reasons for this are, one, people sometimes don't know what they're talking about. There are some people who have maybe booked little things here or there. Maybe they've done some extra roles. Maybe they've booked one or two things. Maybe they've just done it for a year. Whatever it may be, there are people who don't know everything about this industry. They haven't done it for very long. They haven't really delved into it. They can't give this sort of information. Then there are other people who have been in it for a while who do have a lot of information, but they like to keep it for themselves. They like to have it be their little secret things that they can hold on to. So this is the reason that you won't be hearing some of these tips usually. Now, who knows, after this video, once the cat's out of the bag, maybe you'll start hearing it a little bit more. But as of right now, you don't hear this information, and it's some of the most important things that you can get for being an actor. So point number one that we're talking about is you have to work on your communication skills. This is highly important for any actor because, one, you do have to be a good actor. But this is something that people get stuck in their head. They think that acting is the only thing that's part of this industry. But if you want to make it in this industry and you want to be successful, acting is not the only thing that you have to have on your mind. You also have to be thinking about what do you have to do when you're talking with the agent, when you're talking with casting directors and directors. Because acting is an element of it. Of course, you want to be an actor. How can acting not be? But the other side of it is you have to communicate with people as well. So even if you're a great actor, you could come and you could walk in the room and be an amazing actor. But if you don't have any personable skills, if you can't really talk and communicate with people, when you're talking with an agent, it's not going to be really resonant for them when they're listening to you. Because agents want to represent people that they like, that they think are interesting, and they think will do well going into auditions. When you go and you meet an agent, you have to do a lot of talking. They have to get to know you. They got to know what your goals are. They have to know what you've done, what your background is. There's a lot of dialogue back and forth. Now, if you can't have a dialogue with them, a natural conversation, then it makes it a little bit tricky for them to think that they can represent you. Because you got to go into the audition room and you have to go and maybe talk with casting directors and directors. So if I lay it out for you really quick, there's both. There's the acting part and there's also the part of being personable, getting to talk with them, dialogue, really connecting with them. So, one, you have to start acting. You have to be able to act at least decently, a little bit. Now remember, I've talked about in many of my videos before, you do not at all have to be the best actor in the world. By no means. You could literally walk into an audition and be okay and still get a part. I mean, we know this by just watching television shows or movies. There are tons of actors out there who aren't very good. Now, of course, there's great actors, but there's a lot that aren't very good. So that's how we know that we don't have to be great all the time. You just have to have some ability to act. So we know we need that as a basis. So once we get that, maybe we get training, maybe we've booked a few parts here or there for whatever we've been doing, but now you get to the point where you feel ready to go and talk with the agent. You're ready to go and meet with them. Once you have to meet with them, you have to have dialogue. That's where you're talking, that's where you're really communicating with them. So it's not really much acting going on there. So yes, you have to start out being able to act a little bit because that's when you feel comfortable and confident enough to go and talk with the agent. So okay, here you are, here's the acting bit, but now here's the agent. That involves dialogue. And then, if you get that agent, which hopefully you will, then you go on to the next part, which is auditioning. Once you audition, you're back to the acting bit. Because once you're auditioning, you don't really get moments to chat with the casting directors because they're seeing hundreds of people in that day, and they can only be with you for like 2 minutes maybe, and that 2 minutes is booked up for you to do your scenes. Once you do your scenes here, if you get lucky, then you get callbacks. And now during the callbacks, that's where you will then start to talk with the casting directors a little bit more. And then there's a dialogue back and forth, so you have to work on your people skills there. Yes, of course, there will be some acting that you have to do because it's the callback, but they're also going to talk with you. That's a time where they get to communicate with you a little bit more. Maybe they ask you questions, they ask how you're doing. You actually have some sort of a dialogue. But then, after that point, you get to go and meet with maybe the producers or the directors. And then when you're with them, you may have to act, and you're also definitely going to have to talk with them. You're going to have to communicate. There will be a dialogue back and forth. So having good people skills is very, very important. You have to know how to talk with them. You have to know how to have a dialogue. Now, not a lot of actors are good at this, and that's where it starts to become a little bit of a problem for them. So someone can be a great actor, but have terrible people skills. They can't really talk. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do when they're in a room talking with someone in a conversation. Then you can have someone else who is an okay actor. Not so bad, they're all right. They're not great like this person, but they're okay. But they have amazing people skills. They're able to talk and chat forever. Now, these two people, they do have to go and they have to audition for their parts. But if they audition and they get the chance to talk with the director or the casting directors or the producers, and they just naturally like the person who can talk more, they love their personality, that's the person that they're going to choose. Because when it comes down to it, in the end, they are still choosing a human being to play their parts. Now, this human being they connect with more, even though their talent is not bad, it works enough, but they connect with them. This person over here, great acting, but they can't connect with them on a personal level. If you can't connect with them on a personal level, it's very hard for them to accept you or for you to get into the room. So people skills is one of the most important things first that you can work on. Now, you can start this at any age, but I'm saying this because if you're teens right now, you can really start working on this today. Go and start talking with people more. Just have longer conversations. Really start to get to know people and work on your people skills while you can. Because it is harder if you're 35 years old than starting to work on your people skills. It's much easier and much better if you can start it now as early as you can. Because then you can really start to develop your dialogue when you're talking with people. You get to know how to interact more. It's a lot harder though when you're 35 years old compared to when you're a young teen. So this is something that you have to start today. Okay, point number 2 here is decide whether or not you need training. Now, I've talked about it before. Again, actors do not always need training to get a part. They do not always need to have world-class training or ever had gone to an acting class or had an acting coach. They literally might just get lucky, go to an audition, and book the part. It happens. It happened for Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp never decided to be an actor, but he happened to go to 1 audition, 2 auditions, and he booked his parts. He got very, very lucky. Doesn't always happen for everybody, but it does happen for some people. And he was good enough. He was confident enough in himself to go to the audition and do the work that he had to do. Not everyone can do that though. And you have to decide for yourself. Are you good enough right now to start going out there and auditioning and meeting agents and talking with people? Or do you have to work a little bit more? Do you have to fine-tune your skills just a tad bit to really go out to the auditions and really put good work out there? You have to kind of decide for yourself. A good way to do this is to just get out your phone and record yourself. Record yourself doing either a monologue or a scene. You get to pick. Either one works fine. But pick which one you want to do. Do a monologue, do a scene, record yourself, and then watch that recording. Now, when you watch that recording, decide, is it good or is it not good? If it's not good, then maybe you want to get some training so you can improve a little bit more. If you like it and you think it's great, then you don't need any training at all. Then you can say, okay, my work's good enough, I don't have to train, I'm ready to go and start auditioning, getting out there, meeting casting directors. You can do that. You have to decide for yourself. Some people you will already know that you need to work. You need to go and get out there and start just training, because you're nervous when you have to go and do a monologue in front of somebody or do a scene, or you're bad at whatever it is when it comes to acting. Some people know. For me, if I had to say I wanted to be the greatest basketball player in the world, well, I already know right now that I'm not, and I'd have to work at it. That's something I just know. I don't even have to go outside try and play basketball right now. I just know I wouldn't be any good. It's the same when it comes to acting for some people. Some people just know their acting right now isn't that good. It can be improved on, they can grow, they can get better, but right now, not where they want it to be. That's how it is for some people. Decide for yourself. Maybe you already know. You know you're great, or you know you need some training in there. Or you don't know yet, so you have to record yourself and decide. Now, training does help when you meet the agent a little bit, because at least you can say you have some training behind you. It's a little bit harder sometimes if you meet an agent and you haven't done anything before. You haven't booked anything, you haven't been a part of any projects, you haven't got any training. You just walk in the door, you tell them, I haven't done anything, but I want to act. It's a little tricky. It's kind of like going to somewhere and saying, hey, I want to be a basketball player, I want to be a part of your team. And they ask you, oh, okay, well, what have you done before? What kind of training have you done? Or what kind of games have you played? And you're like, oh, I've done none. Well, then they're going to look at you and say, what? You never trained before? You never played before even? You've never been on a team, but you want to be on our team? And hopefully it's a professional team, a good agency you want to be part of. Then they're going to look at you and say, you haven't done anything. I don't know if you're right for this. But now if you do at least have some training behind you, because sometimes it's not always easy to be a part of a project and book something depending on where you are and different factors that get involved, but you can say the type of training that you've received. Some of my students have used the 10-hour acting masterclass I created. They put it on their resumes, it starts a dialogue with the agents when they're talking with them, and it's acceptable out there within the industry. Because they know, okay, it's a 10-hour comprehensive acting masterclass, and then I've talked with the agents about it before too, and they think it's all great. So it works. You just have to find what type of training you want, whether that be my 10-hour acting masterclass, or you go and get coaching from somebody, or you take classes somewhere, or some people, they go to drama school, and that's something that they have on their resume. It's just that little extra thing that you can, talk about, and it gives you a little bit of an extra footing forward because they can say, okay, you've at least done something. All right, tip number 3 is to start working now on your memorization skills. So within this business, you're going to have to do a lot of memorizing, because as an actor, you're going to have to memorize movements, choreography, blocking, scripts, monologues, scenes. You have to memorize a lot. The main things though that you will be focusing on is the text. So you do have to focus on what type of monologues you're doing, what type of scenes you're doing. And you have to be able to memorize things quickly, especially if you ever get booked. If you're on set, depending on how big your part is, how many days you're booked for, you're really going to have to start memorizing lines sometimes the day before. And especially when you're doing a lot of auditioning. Sometimes you get the day before auditions, or you get an audition the day of, and the agent calls you and says, hey, how you doing? You got an audition in the next 3 hours. You got to go make it there. Here's your scenes. Good luck. You have to work on the memorization. It's what you're going to have throughout this entire industry. Whether or not you're trying to make it or you have made it, you're going to have to memorize a lot. So start memorizing now. If you're a teen right now, start. It's a lot harder sometimes to start building up new skills when you're 35, 45. Not impossible, but it is a lot harder. But if you're a teen, you can really get started today. Really start working on trying to memorize different lines, different monologues, different scenes. Some people ask me sometimes, well, how can I find a monologue or find a scene? Literally, you can either go to the store and you could get a play if you wanted, or if you want to do something more modern, just go on Google and type in the scene that you're looking for or a monologue. Or if you don't know what to look for at all, just type in free monologues, free scenes. The point is that you're working on your memorization skills. You're really trying to find out, how can I start memorizing my lines better? Now, there are different tricks to memorizing lines, right? I have a bunch of videos that I've talked about this before. You can use one of my tips if you like, or if it doesn't resonate with you, then you use someone else's tips. But you have to find out how to build your skill on memorizing lines. If you can't memorize lines in this business, this industry, it's very hard, practically impossible. If you want to be an actor, you have to memorize lines. Unless you plan on acting without speaking at all. You could be that type of actor, but that would be a very hard actor to make it in this industry. So really start working on memorizing your lines. Start today, get a head start on that early. Not a lot of people talk about that. Not a lot of coaches are going to tell you, hey, really focus on this, even though it's one of the most important elements in acting. One of the most important things you can think of. All of these points really are. But really memorizing lines, if you can't do that, no matter what else you do, all this different teachings on emotional memory and the method, even though I don't agree with those all necessarily, all those teachings don't matter at all if you can't memorize lines. Even my teachings don't matter. You go through my 10-hour acting masterclass and you know how to act, you know how to put out your characters and be great, but you can't memorize lines. Well, then it's still very hard to be an actor, because memorizing lines is one of the things that you have to get down. So you can start and get an early start on that now. This now leads me and brings me into tips number 4. Tip number 4 is now working on your reading and sight reading skills. So when I say reading, I literally mean reading. You want to be a good reader, because since you are going to be going through tons of lines all the time, you want to be able to read well, because sometimes you're going to have to read out loud. Sometimes you're just going to have to read to yourself, but you want to be able to comprehend everything. So reading is just one of those basic important skills. You should literally be reading every day if you can. It also helps build your imagination skills sometimes, depending on what books you're actually reading. But now when I say sight reading, what I mean by that is literally having lines, having text in front of you, and really working on being able to glance at your lines for a split second, look up, and then have a bunch of lines that you can speak and say. Now this is not easy at first. The example of this I'll give is, say you have lines and they say the cat went to the park. So you look away, then you look at the lines for a split second, 1 or 2 seconds, and then you see the lines, the cat went to the park. Now at first, you may not be able to get all the lines. You may just get the cat went. And that's okay, that's normal. Most people can't get a ton of words at first. So then you go through and you go, okay, the cat went, and then you don't know what the rest of it is, so you look down, okay, to the park. And then you get it like that, and you keep working in that way. At first, you may only get just a few words, but those few words turn into more words, and then eventually lines, and hopefully you can get a few lines. Because you may get auditions that require you to do a new scene or a new line. You may be called in to read for one role. Let's say you're called in to read for the role of Jared. And then you come in and then they say, oh, okay, you know what? I'm not seeing you as a Jared, but I see you as playing this guy, Colin. So you go, oh, okay. So they give you these lines, say, okay, go and read for Colin. Come back in the next 5-10 minutes, have a look at the scene, and then, come and do it for us. Well, you got to be able to, one, hopefully memorize as best you can, but you will have to look down at your lines. It's just something that'll naturally happen. When you do, though, you don't want to just be looking at the lines the whole time. You still need to connect with the reader, still connect with the casting director, because the camera will be watching you. So if you're down here 80% of the time and only 20% of it is looking at the casting director or the person reading with you, it's very, very hard to then connect. It's really hard for the camera to see you and really get to know the essence of your character or who you are. So it's really important to work on those sight reading skills. Tip number 5, and the last tip here, is to start familiarizing yourself now with different agencies and different agents. Really start to get to know this business a little bit more. If you're younger, it's a lot easier because you have a lot of time on your hands. Right now, you're probably going to be starting to just get into acting a little bit. Start knowing the basics of what you have to do, how to memorize lines, because you want to be ready when you meet the agent. If you're not ready, you kind of ruin that experience that maybe would have been great if you had met them 1 year later. So you're really trying to plan out when you're going to meet with the agents, because you got to feel ready. If you feel ready, then you can meet them. But if you don't feel ready, you probably want to hold off a little bit. But you want to know which agencies you want to start communicating with, which ones you want to get in touch with. It's kind of like, say you're going to go and you're going to travel somewhere. You're in LA, you're going to travel to New York, and you're going to be in New York for 2 days. Well, let's say you're a food lover and you want to eat great food. But you got breakfast, you got lunch, and you got dinner. So you got different places you can look at. You're going to do your research. You're going to find out which restaurants you want to go to, because there's going to be hundreds of restaurants. But you get to decide which one you want to choose. It's the same with agencies. There's tons of agencies out there, but you get to choose which ones you want to be a part of, hopefully, and which agents you want to work with. Now, you can't always get every agency you want depending on your skill level, where you are, and your talent, because sometimes there's certain agencies that will only take people who have booked a lot or who are on a big movie. So sometimes you have to have a lot on your resume, but there's other agencies that won't always need that. But you have to do your research on which ones those are. Again, it's kind of like going to those restaurants in New York. Well, which restaurants can you afford? Sometimes you may not be able to afford the restaurant quite yet. Next few years, maybe you can, but as of right now, maybe you can't. So really start to familiarize yourself with different agencies, because when you are ready, you want to know which ones you want to go with. All right, thank you everybody for being here. Again, if you're new, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I hope this helped all of you guys. It's really important to get these tips down. These are tips that nobody talks about. These are the little secret nuances that you get to have that nobody is telling anybody. Again, sometimes people like to keep it a secret. Sometimes they don't even know what they're talking about. So just make sure that you guys start really focusing on these things, because they're really going to help you. Leave down in the comments section below which point really resonated with you. Which one made sense to you? Which one really are you going to start working on? Maybe it's all of them. Maybe it's just one of them. But put it down in the comments below, and make sure you give this video a thumbs up to support the channel. All right? Thanks for being here, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.